got what I call loop 128s for you this time. They're just a little bit more work to set up at times, but they're really, really powerful. So I'm going to show you how they work right now, what you can use them for. But generally, it's accessing synced loops, stacks of them at a time. Right. So if you haven't seen any of the other videos in the series, definitely start with episode 1. But it is, like I said, going to be stacks of loops at a time, and you'll be able to play certain ones and not play certain ones. And so you're going to get like this nice layered effect, and it works for drums, it works for MIDI, music loops. So I'm just going to take you through it right now. So the way that I like to do it, and I've sort of refined this over time, right, is you'll notice all of these loops here are all in E minor. So the way I did that is I searched in quotes E minor, right? And another time I also did without the space, so just E min, right? Because that's how most of the time they're formatted. Sometimes it's just EM. That's not very useful for searching. But so when you go to loops, right, you'll find all these music loops, and I just basically did my somatics ones, and not even all of them. I just did like piano and strings. I didn't even get guitar and stuff in here, but you'll see how it's useful really quick, right? So I grabbed a whole bunch until I had like over 128, right? And so you can see this, and then there's two things you got to do before you start throwing them into your 128, right? But once you've done this, it's very quick. But you need to make sure that it's actually at the right BPM. Right, so you notice that this is at 120, this says 120, right? I've actually gone through all these and made sure they're at the right BPM, and you want to make sure they're all looped as well. So if you select track content, you'll get everything. You want to make sure that this warp is all on for everything, that this loop is all on for everything, right? And then you can start going through it and making sure that all of the BPMs match. Now, for what I like to do so that these layer nicer is if it's fast, like basically 120 or faster, I'll cut the tempo in half. So you'll notice these are all at 70, even though it says 140. And that's how I write music too. I usually write music, all of my tempos are usually between 60 and 120. If it's like 180, I'll write it at 90, just for consistency, and it sort of makes working with the tools a little bit easier at times. But it doesn't really matter. It's up to you. If you like to work in faster tempos, then by all means you can double all the slow ones, right? And if you're writing a song that's technically in 60, but you want to think about it in 120, that's totally doable. But if you have stuff that's at 60 and you have stuff that's at like 180 in this, it's not going to layer very nicely. And ultimately, that's part of the power of this, is you're going to quickly be able to layer all these different loops, right? So check it. So I've gone through, I've made sure that they're all in sync. Right, this takes a little bit longer on music loops because sometimes the beat detection isn't good. But when you do it with drum loops, it's really quick and easy. You can see how uniform where they line up is, right? So you basically have to do no work, but you do have to double check that these are all falling, on the grid, right? And so you'll notice I deleted some. There's some that weren't also in the right key, and you'll find that happens pretty often. So things won't be in the right key. So I just deleted those because you could mix things that are in a different key, but you're going to find that you have to go through and you have to correct the key on every single one. And it's way better just to make a 128 out of stuff that's all in the same key, and then make multiple 128s for multiple keys, and then have these sort of serve a purpose. So take a listen really quick. Right. So they all sound nice, and they're mostly designed to be support loops. Like some of them you could have melodies, I don't know. We'll show you what it sounds like soon, but basically once you've gotten all of them, made sure that they're at the right tempo, it really doesn't take that long. You just sort of go through and you delete all the ones that don't sound right, like in the context of the other ones, right? So I'll sometimes delete stuff just because it's the only really aggressive dubsteppy loop in the whole thing, and everything else is nice pretty piano. So I'll try and get a sort of consistent texture in some senses. Is this a backing stuff, or is this aggressive? I might want different 128s for that. So just keep that in mind. But once you've done that, all you need to do is take these, select track contents, right? And so I'm going to provide these templates for you, right? And I've got a few of them. So I'm going to throw this in this guy here, right? And what these are Let me just, if you don't do this first, if you try and drag it from your browser, you're going to have a lot of errors, right? It's going to interpret the warping and the loop points all, you know, based off of whatever the algorithms decide is right as opposed to what's actually right. So, if the tempo's off or something, it's not going to loop very well. So you just want to make sure that they're all on the grid and that the loop braces are set up good. But once you have that, then you can drag it in. So don't drag it in from your browser like you do with the other 128s because it needs this syncing going on. And then you're going to be able to drop it in this template, right? And so you'll notice there's this one template guy here, right? That shouldn't go away. That's assigned to receive all racks, but I'm going to show you what to do in a second. So we're going to drag this down to the lower left-hand corner. Make sure you have 128 loops. Right, and I think I missed 3. Right, and this will take just a minute because it's creating 128 different simplers, right? So it's a little bit more resource intensive than the other 128s. So just keep that in mind when you're loading them. They'll take longer to load, and once you find the loops in it that you're going to use, it's going to be helpful to go ahead and delete the ones you're not using. Right, in this chain selector region right over here, right? All these chains are going to be there. Just figure out which ones aren't firing and just delete those, right? So that's going to save you some resources in the long run. Right, so we've got these all loaded, right? And I'm just going to find 3 more loops to sort of fill this drum rack up really quick. So we just add this to 128 up here. And we're done. Okay, so now all of these should be in key. I didn't make sure that they had labeled the key right on these last 3, but whatever. They're all synced and everything. So there's something I want to point out right now is that the warp mode that these are all in is Complex Pro. Now I think that's the best one for this purpose, right? But in order to get it to be the default that comes up, you actually need to control for that, right? And the way you do that is in your defaults, right? So check this. If you go to and search for defaults, right, you'll have this folder, and when you look at dropping samples on a drum rack, right, you'll have this simpler, right? So this simpler is how it's gonna, the kind of like what your drum rack is going to look like, the simplers in it. And you'll notice this is on Complex Pro. If I was on Beats mode or something like that, which maybe you would want to do that if you're doing drum loops, but I find that for some of the tricks that I like doing in terms of sound design, Complex Pro ends up working better. But you would have to change this default, and then you just swap out the file. So if I want to change how the default warp mode is for all the samples, I would need to take this out, right? Throw it down, right? Change the warp mode and throw it back in here, right? And over or save over this. Then when we drag one of these loops onto this 128 here, what you'll see is that we'll be in Beats mode, right? So I actually prefer Complex Pro mode for pretty much all the things that I like to do with these 128s. It can sound a little bit better sometimes to be in Beats mode with Beats, and it's less processor intensive, right? But for some of the pitch shifty things that I like to do, it actually sounds better even with drums to do it in Complex Pro mode. So I just leave it on Complex, or I put it on Complex Pro mode. And it's worth noting that's not the default. So you're going to have to actually switch this out on your system. And I can drop this in the description. It's not going to help you that much because you still have to throw it in your defaults folder. But that will get you to be able to warp in Complex Pro mode. Okay, so really quick, I've got this loop 128, right? And the way this works is every single one is going to play in E minor, right? So if I want to change to a different key, I've got this pitch knob, and that will change the pitch of every one of these samples. So the way we end up using this is we want to get these macro knobs working first, right? So we'll be able to pitch shift everything and all this stuff, but it's not mapped, right? So I did another video on this options.txt file, but it enables something called map to siblings. And what that is it, well, I'll just show you, right? So see this filter frequency, right? In order to get this to map to everything, I need to right click and I need to map to all siblings. And there's 128 of them, right? Because there's 128 cells in this drum rack. This option doesn't show up unless you alter that options.txt file. It's super easy to do. You just put this one line of text in there. I've got a video where you can download my option.txt file and just throw it in a folder on your computer and you're done. That will enable this, which is really useful for building tools. Right, so if I click on that, right, I'm also going to map this one, and basically every single one of these that is mapped, and all those will have a green dot. So see, green dot, so I'm just going to map all siblings, right? This one, right, spread, map all siblings, right? Transpose, map to all siblings. Now, this also has some stuff on the LFO. Some other ones have some pitch envelope stuff, but I don't really use the pitch envelope stuff on melody loops and like chord loops because it doesn't make as much sense. So that's why I have a preset for this. But drums, it's actually really cool. You can build like risers and stuff where the pitch is going up and up and up. So I definitely use pitch envelopes on drum loops all the time. Just make sure that all these things here are mapped to all siblings, mapped to all siblings. And I'll show you how these work really quick. There's some cool functionality that I built into them. But right now, that should be everything that's mapped to all siblings. All right, so we've got, this, and you'll see that it doesn't pop up anymore because it is mapped to all siblings already. All right, so all these are done. Right, this pitch thing is done. All the filter stuff is done. Right, so we're ready to go. The last thing I would do is I would delete this template here. Right. Just because you don't want it playing, it's going to actually play on every single note that you pick, right? So you don't want that. It's only got silence loaded into it, so it's not going to make any noise, but it is going to have like LFOs running and stuff. So there's going to be some overhead to it. So definitely don't have that running. But now it's ready. So I was explaining stuff for a while, but it's really just get a stack of good loops, double check that they're good, throw them in here, copy value to or copy mapping to all siblings, right? And then you're done. And so the way it would work is we just grab some samples, right? And they'll all work, right? They're all going to play in E minor. If we're in a different key, we just change that pitch knob. We just grab a handful of these, right, that we think might work together. Right, so I've got some piano stuff up here. I think there's a guitar thing up there. Right, so we can just play and watch. Right, so some of these don't sound great, so I might just change out the ones that aren't good, maybe only use like 2 or 3, right? Right, so I like that one. That one's pretty nice, I think. This one's a little bit busy. Right, that one sounds like it's going to be pretty good. And so I think we only have these 3, so let's take a listen. Right, so this is one. I like, some of these loops are longer, so we'll just not duplicate, but double, right? So usually like 4 bars, sometimes 8 bars is best, depending on how long the loops in there are. Right. You can throw in like another loop that starts here. I don't like that one, but that's the thing. So we might say change out some of the loops. Put this one, say, here and here. Here, let's make this grid wider. All right, so I might put one here. This one sounds nice, right? Put like a different one on the 4th. And then even the second time we can have like a little, right, so. So I don't like that one anymore. It's this one I didn't like. Alright, so yeah. Alright, and so I can make like a little fill thing here. And sometimes something that works nice is you can go into these, right, and you can look at this one that's playing right here. That is this guy. So a lot of times the most fill-like things happen somewhere besides the beginning. Right, so if you adjust this start, you know, you could throw the last like 2 beats in, whatever, and then when this plays, or one measure rather, so we could throw this in for one measure, right, 75%, and then we'll get kind of a fill thing, right? Cool, so I like all those. I think that this is cool, right? So the next thing we're going to do is build some drum 128s, and we're going to add this to it and call it a day. Right, so I made I'm making 2 types right now, right? So one is kick loops and like also kick snare, right? So it's kind of like the meat of the drum beat, right? So you can see that we've got actually over 128 of these, but it's no biggie. The end ones will get chopped off, right? So I would grab this, right? I go into my drum one and yeah, I'm going to throw this one in this rack and then the other one in the other rack. All right, so we just throw this in, wait for it to load. So I went ahead and also loaded up the top loops. You know, a lot of these come from Cashmere and some other people. They're really nice. But these are like top loops, and I got this sort of muscle backbeat or backbone of the beat, right, for these like kick snare kind of loops. Right, and so you know, we go through, we do the same macro mapping thing that we did last time, right? So this one is, you know, one of these no filter templates. So there's nothing on the filter. It's all back in these controls. But we need to go to our template, right? And then we just start right click, map to all siblings, right click. Okay, so we're good. So then we just do the same thing we did before, right? We just, you know, we're not going to layer so much on this one because, you know, you don't want to have too many kicks and snares going at the same time because you get this flanging. So we're just going to find one good one, and maybe we'll like switch it up to one that's a similar beat structure, but it's slightly different every now and then, you know, just as like kind of like a fill or like a switch up kind of thing, so we get like a variety. All right, so what I might do is I might duplicate this twice and then find like a couple different ones. Oh, I'm soloing. Maybe do this one twice and then this one different. All right, so let's see how this sounds. right? And let's get this top loop going on. Right, so we can do something similar. We can get one that's going the whole time maybe, and then every bar or something will switch up to a different one. Right? Yeah, so we have, this is a little bit easier to layer. But we can do a little bit more, you know. Right, so have one that's going the whole time. We'll change what these are eventually. Right, have one that's like here. Right, and none of, you know, some of these might be not good. And let's have one that's going on the first half versus one that's going on the second half. So we've got 3 going at any given time, which is a lot. But I want rich, complex beats, and just to show you some ideas, right? Right, so I don't like, yeah, I don't like that one. Yeah, I don't like that. Alright, so I might put this one over here, and then this one here. Cool. And so you get the point, and we could like even like program some weird like drum fill thing like this. Say this one happens here and here. All right, so check it. Alright, so we've already got something pretty cool together. You get the sense for how quick the workflow is here. You know, I'm not always the biggest about using loops all the time, but it's nice to have like one of these top loop 128s just in case you want to like spice something up, even just for like one section in your song, right? So I just want to show you some of the special features. I have these LFOs set up for you guys, right? So this is if you want everything LFOing together. You can always, you know, you'll notice there's like a lot of mappings here, and that's because they're mapped to everything. So once you figure out the loops that you do want to use, you can delete out the ones you're not using, and then that will dramatically reduce those. But you can always unmap those or never map them in the first place if you really want. Right? But you can unmap those, and then you can set these up individually for your each loop. So if you want the auto pan going on one loop, you know, slower and other stuff, you know, each of these loops has its own controls, so you just have to unlink it from the macros. But it's also, they're on their own chain, right? So you can apply, you know, an external auto pan effect or whatever on the individual chain as well. So you can design each loop how you want it, right, and still get it to work under this same sort of umbrella. And then the other nice thing is if you don't know about this extract chain feature, right, so we can delete this template. Right, but if you extract chains, what that will do is it'll pull out this specific drum cell, right, which is this one down here, and then you'll have the same thing, but you'll just have this as one individual loop. So if you're trying to mix your track down in a specific way or like stem things out in a particular way or whatever, you can always just extract these chains. We've got our loops and our 128s and everything. Just close that. So we got this basically. Right, I mean, besides the building of the 128s, if you already have your 128s built, you could put something to like this together in like literally 5 minutes. It really takes no time. And there is like a little bit of variation because of the way we sort of checkerboarded these loops here, right? So you can see the sections are evolving. So if you're just trying to make like quick beats for like, I don't know, hip hop producers or something like, or hip hop, you know, like rappers and whatnot, this might be a viable way to sketch out something quickly. But yeah, you know, just play with some of these, right? Like this I'll show you some of the examples of these morphs and stuff, but you can morph these filters, like turn on these LFOs. Right, see if the filter's not on, it's not going to LFO. Right, so you've got, the filter just closes when you have it all the way up. I actually did a few things. So the filter closes when you're all the way up. This LFO will turn off when it's all the way up. And it's also going to turn all the LFOs on, just FYI. So it is pretty resource intensive ultimately if you turn on, all your LFOs. So again, delete the ones that you're not going to use, right? And it really doesn't take that long, right? Okay, so I deleted those and I left some in there just in case I wanted to make like a couple different versions because some of these are nice, but you get the point. Right, so we've got this loop going on, we've got this filter stuff you can do. So I want to show you how I did this. On this template, it's tricky because you actually have to go and if you flip this, it will go to non-synced mode versus synced mode right in the middle, and so it gives you two different options, but I forgot to do the map to all siblings there, right? But it's pretty straightforward. I would just map that to the same place, the LFO rate. And the problem is I'm going to have to do this backwards, right? So look for the green, right? LFO rate, and it'll be the only one that is the synced one. So you've got all these, so it's going to be at the bottom, right? This guy, you have to flip it, just in this case, to work the way that you want. Actually, I had to flip both of these, right? But once that's done, I can go to copy value to all siblings, right? And now check it. All right, so you've got the unsynced wobble there, which is really nice for a lot of reasons. But then you've got the synced wobble over here. Now it turns off here, but if you just go a little bit down, you can still get that 32 beats per minute. So for this offset, I actually recommend 90 as the offset. You could right click and you could copy value to all siblings. Oops. Actually in the template that I'm giving you, this will be at 90 by default. All right, but that the reason for that is if you stretch this out, you notice that it starts fully engaged. All right, so if you're doing like eighth notes or something, then I'll do all these eighth note spikes. All right, and this one doesn't have a macro for the filter offset, but this one actually does, right? And so you can see the offset here. And so it's just kind of a preference of how you want your 128 set up. And you can do other stuff, like you can do the pan, and you can do this. This is all going to be on an individual thing, but if you want it to apply to all of them, you could right click and copy value to siblings. All right, so we can go through the ones and like do different amounts. This one has some volume. So this filter needs to be in morph mode to work, right? So you can copy that to all siblings. Now they're all in morph mode. All right, so there's some other tricks. When I'm doing this, I actually like to automate these parameters, and it's really easy to do. If you just right click, right? So if we were to like say right click on this, right, we could go to show automation, right? And so this is going to change the filter mode now, right? We could automate this rate, and sort of the way I like to think about it is enhance the existing phrasing. Once you got that, right? So I kind of want to build up going faster and faster. And then I want to slow down here maybe. Right, so then I would go to the depth. This is just an example. I mean, you can do anything really. But if I go to this filter depth through automation, right, I'll pull it back anytime it feels like it's going too intense. Right, and you basically just gotta keep refining it until nothing in it sucks. Things to remember: go through all your loops, make sure that they are actually in the right timing and that the loop braces are set up right. Usually that will be done automatically by Ableton, but sometimes you just gotta correct it. Delete out all the ones that aren't actually in the right key. Make sure to copy value to siblings on the filter, right, and on the offset, right, which is at 90, or which is default at 90. That's not as important, but certainly on this filter type, otherwise this morph knob's not going to work. But then copy the macro mapping from that template guy all the way to the rest of them, right? Then do the copy value to siblings. Hope you enjoyed this one. It's a really powerful tool. These templates will all be in the description for you. It's really not that tough. Especially these drum guys, the like going through the samples and making sure that the timing's right kind of takes the longest time of anything. After that, the mapping value to siblings really doesn't take very long at all. You got to make sure that you get at every one of them, and so maybe don't delete that template chain right away, just to make sure that you've got everything. But besides that, I mean, once you have this, layering together something really, pretty clean sounding happens really fast. And like I said, you can just use this to fill out a section really quick and be like, the drums here are so stale. I just want these to be different than the rest of the song, right? Just grab one of these top loop 128s quickly, throw down a few layers, that are checkerboarded a little bit, and you're done. It's extremely fast. And there's some tricks you can do with the pitch and the LFOs and stuff that are really cool. So have fun, enjoy the templates. Let me know if you find any cool uses or other ways to hack these things so that we can all take it to the next level together. And I love you guys. Thanks for watching. Take care.